Police arrest a man in connection with yesterday's money rain incident in Sham Shui Po. Visitors to Hong Kong expected to hit an all-time high this year. And in Sri Lanka, the president reinstates the prime minister that he sacked.
Good evening and welcome. Police have arrested a man for disorderly conduct in public space. A 24-year-old is suspected of links to an incident in Sham Shui Po yesterday in which money fell from the sky. Haley Joe has our top story.
Police officers stopped the suspect once he stepped out of his car on Phuc Wing Street in Sham Shui Po this afternoon. He is suspected to be the person behind the money rain in that neighborhood yesterday. This man claimed he saw the suspect holding bundles of $500 banknotes and attracted crowds of spectators. And this man said he heard him say, "I have $100,000 with me for buying meal boxes." The area was cordoned off this afternoon as detectives looked for witnesses and security camera footage from shops nearby. The suspect's car was pulled over at the scene. Behind me is the car the suspect drove to Sham Shui Po, but the vehicle license on the car already expired last month. Police are now looking into the motive behind the stunt.
This 24-year-old male, surnamed Wong, was arrested for disorderly conduct in public place. Police have seized about 60 banknotes or $100 banknotes, so approximately 6,000. Intention, I think this is one of the directions that we will investigate.
Money fell from the sky in Sham Shui Po yesterday afternoon as someone threw banknotes down to the street from a residential building. Chaos followed as bystanders tried to catch the $100 bills. It is believed a local internet entrepreneur who got rich from his Bitcoin business pulled a stunt as the act was teased and broadcast live on Facebook. Haley Joe, TVB News.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan is optimistic the numbers of tourists visiting Hong Kong this year will hit an all-time high. Christy Lung with the details.
The current record of 60.8 million visitors dates back to 2014. The annual figure then declined during the following 2 years. Now, Financial Secretary Paul Chan is confident the total number this year will exceed the 2014 record. Citing official figures on his weekly blog post, in October alone, more than 5.8 million tourists came to the city. With the opening of the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, Chan is expecting an even higher figure for November. He said more than 50.8 million tourists had visited the city up to the end of October this year. The figure is 10% higher than that from the same period last year. Chan added that the tourism industry accounts for around 4.5% of the city's gross domestic product, as well as 6.7% of the city's employment population. Therefore, the industry needs to be strengthened to ensure a steady development of the local economy, along with future infrastructure projects such as the new border control point at Liantang and the third runway at the airport. Chan believes they will help boost the city's status as a leading destination for tourists. Christy Lung, TVB News.
2 local activists who protested outside a controversial war shrine in Tokyo are expected to appear in court on Wednesday. That's according to their affiliated group, Action Committee for Defending the Diaoyu Islands. Sharon Tang reports.
Last Wednesday, Kwok Soo-kit and Yin Man-hwa staged a protest at Yasukuni Shrine, where Japan's 2.5 million war dead, including some Class A war criminals, were honored. Setting alight a prop of one of the war criminals, the pair were pushing for an apology from the Japanese government. This also happened on the eve of the 81st anniversary of the Nanjing Massacre, which followed the fall of the Chinese city to Japanese invasion forces in 1937. While the Chinese embassy in Japan was said to be providing assistance to them, the two have been held in custody ever since. One was arrested for trespassing the grounds of Yasukuni Shrine. The woman who was filming the protest was reportedly detained. The Action Committee for Defending the Diaoyu Islands says the Japanese court will be dealing with the case on December 19th, with the charges against the two activists still uncertain. A member of the committee says he hopes the pair could be released before the court hearing this Wednesday. He added it also remains unclear if Yin Manhua was officially arrested. The committee has also sent someone to Japan to follow up on the case. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam met with a top central government official in Beijing today. Lam and the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, Zheng Xiaoming, did not take questions from the media. The CE arrived at the Chinese capital yesterday for a 4-day duty visit. One of the highlights will be a meeting with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang tomorrow. Lam will inform them on the SAR's developments this year.
In an effort to avoid a government shutdown, Sri Lanka's disputed prime minister has officially resigned, and its president was forced to reinstate the former prime minister.
Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as Sri Lanka's prime minister today. It's a remarkable comeback just weeks after he was ousted by President Maithripala Sirisena. Sirisena had replaced Wickremesinghe with former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, following differences over policy matters and other issues. Even though Rajapaksa was officially sworn in as Prime Minister on October 26, Wickremesinghe refused to resign. With all that infighting, Rajapaksa failed to win a parliamentary majority. Sirisena tried dissolving parliament and called for new elections, but the Supreme Court struck down that move as unconstitutional. In addition to Wickremesinghe having the support of 117 lawmakers in parliament, Sirisena did not follow due procedure when sacking him. In the end, the president was compelled to reinstate Wickremesinghe as prime minister. But for the past month, the South Asian island has been in a political gridlock. With no government to approve the budget, the country ran the risk of being unable to use state funds from January 1st. In the fallout, credit rating agencies Fitch and Standard & Poor's downgraded Sri Lanka, citing refinancing risks.
Anti-government protesters once again took to the streets in France. It is the 5th weekend in a row demonstrations have been held, but numbers for this latest rally were down. Peter Coveas tells us more.
In the French capital, Yellow Vest protesters once again gathered on the Champs-Élysées. This is the 5th weekend in a row that massive demonstrations have been held. Police used tear gas and water cannons to disperse the mobs of people. The ongoing unrest has crippled parts of France, but it has had an effect. Earlier this week, President Emmanuel Macron announced an increase to the minimum wage and tax cuts to try to quell the anger of the rioters. Citizens say his gesture doesn't go far enough. This demonstrator wants a decrease to all taxes on basic necessities: transport, food, housing, energy, everything. The Yellow Vest movement started as a protest against fuel taxes, but has now turned into a protest against Macron's policies. This person was in no festive mood. He says they don't trust the government anymore and want a complete overhaul of the Constitution. Roughly 60,000 people demonstrated nationwide this weekend. That's about half the size of previous rallies. Some people believe the numbers are down because the government's called to limit demonstrations following a gun attack in Strasbourg this week at a Christmas market. At least 4 people were killed in that attack. Usually during the holiday season, the capital is bustling with shoppers and tourists, but the unrest has led to chaos.
No taxi driver would give us a lift. Everything was boarded along the Champs-Élysées. There was hardly any shops open around the right area. We couldn't get around the Arc de Triomphe. There was just vans all around it and smoke all in the sky.
Macron will rock you.
That's probably the nicest thing said about the French president and his policies this week. Peter Coveas, TVB News.
Well, France was not the only European nation to witness Yellow Vest protest. Demonstrators in Belgium and Italy also voiced their concerns with their governments. In Brussels, thousands marched to protest against low wages and high taxes. At least one person was detained by police. Officials also say another man was killed when his car hit a truck near the French-Belgian border during a rally there. In Rome, protesters, migrants, and asylum seekers protested against the Italian government's policy towards immigrants. The so-called Salvini decree aims to reduce the number of newcomers granted humanitarian protection. Still ahead on tonight's news, an agreement on rules to govern the Paris Climate Accord after 2 weeks of UN climate talks in Poland. Ukraine names the head of the new National Orthodox Church. And Vladimir Putin wants to control rap music in Russia.
三、突破流動生活界限，開創網絡新體驗，隨時隨地精彩無間。三、邁向5G革新未來。
黎3零機價出新 plan， 及現有客戶配全新外遊增值服務，旗艦手機即變 Global Phone， 以後去旅行就唔使租蛋換SIM，就可以盡情上網盡情傾，仲可選多一張 SIM 卡同親友分享，每月都係78蚊。
And welcome back. Nearly 200 nations have agreed to a landmark deal aimed at fighting global warming. This came after stakeholders put aside political issues that divided them. Jameson Wong reports.
It is so decided.
Hugs, kisses, and applause ended 2 weeks of talks in the Polish city of Katowice as nations finally reached a consensus.
We will all have to give in order to gain. We will all have to be courageous to look into the future and make yet another step for the sake of humanity. It is your work. It is your achievement. It is something the world has been waiting for.
The 200 nations agreed to a more detailed framework for the 2015 Paris Agreement.
We have now clear rules for transparency, for finance. We made a major step, and we also showed that the European Union is a front runner.
Today is a big day for multilateralism, for a rules-based global order. We have demonstrated that all the world can be united fighting global warming.
The goal they reached is to limit a rise in average world temperatures to well below 2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. The critics say that's still not ambitious enough.
On this rule book, I think that is a solid outcome. Basically what you now have is that all countries, the US, China, Europe, South Africa, etc., have accepted binding rules and common rules to report and review what they're doing. And that's important. But that doesn't substitute for the need to build ambition and to say, okay, we get it, we're going to go and increase our ambition, because it's really the very existence of islands and people that's at stake here.
India has reservations to the draft decision.
The decision here today doesn't really solve anything. I think we got to do practical things. We got to cut down the emission drastically in terms of emissions.
But ambition, says the United Nations, will be the driving force to making future changes that matter.
And ambition must guide all member states as they prepare their nationally determined contributions for 2020 to reverse the present trend in which climate change is still running faster than us. It is our duty to reach for more and I count on all of you to raise ambitions so that we can beat back climate change.
Jameson Wong, TVB News.
Now to another departure in U.S. President Donald Trump's administration. America's Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has resigned. Zinke is accused of several ethics violations. He's blamed for having his wife travel with him in government vehicles. He's also accused of using his security detail on a family vacation that cost taxpayers $25,000 US. He's also blamed for blocking 2 Native American tribes from expanding their casinos. Critics claim he was lobbied by a gaming firm that wants to open its own casino nearby. Zinke claims he did nothing wrong and calls the allegations politically motivated attacks.
In a move that marks an historic split from Russia, Ukraine has chosen the head of a new National Orthodox Church. 39-year-old Metropolitan Epiphany was chosen as head of the church by a council. President Petro Poroshenko says the move is vital to the country's security and independence. The Ukrainian Orthodox Church has been beholden to Moscow for hundreds of years. Ukraine's leaders see church independence as vital to tackling Russian meddling. Relations between Ukraine and Russia collapsed after Moscow seized Crimea in 2014. Ukraine imposed martial law in November after Russia captured 3 of its vessels in the Kerch Strait.
And rap music is gaining popularity in Russia, and that has President Vladimir Putin worried. Putin met with cultural advisors in Moscow to unearth ideas to quell its approval amongst Russia's youth. He believes the genre of music could lead to the decline of the nation. Putin did not ban the genre or prohibit artists from performing. However, he said, if it's impossible to stop, then we must lead it and direct it. He thinks an outright ban would only increase its popularity. There has been a recent crackdown on rap music in Russia, which some have compared to the Soviet-era censorship of the arts.
Back here at home, the Civic Party today announced its executive committee members for a new term of office. Alan Long and legislator Alvin Young will continue serving as the party's chairman and leader. Bill Lay and lawmaker Tanya Chan will continue serving as vice chairs. The party's founding leader, Audrey Yu, did not run in the election as she stepped down for the younger generation.
And despite the government's efforts to promote integrated education for students with special educational needs, a concerned group says that's not enough. Pinky Wong explains.
Ms. Wu's 2 daughters are SEN students, or children with special educational needs. They are among some 67,000 SEN students in the city. Ms. Wu says her daughter's school provides tutorial classes for SEN students, but tutors are in short supply. One tutor has to teach more than 6 students at the same time. The Society for Community Organization, or SOCO, has been assisting these families.
This support ways is not enough. Most schools, they provide the tutorial classes to the students, but some SEN cases such as ADHD, the learning disorder, they couldn't be benefit from this kind of supportive ways. They need the tutor to students based on one-on-one base.
SOCO launched a pilot scheme last year, providing up to $400 each to SEN students from 8 families to help pay for tutorial and interest classes. The parents have noticed changes in their kids' self-confidence, which in turn has boosted their academic results.
We think it's very important to let them can develop their potentials. If their confidence is improved, and which also can help them to improve their school performance.
They hope a financial support of $1,200 can be provided to each SEN student by the government. Also, what cannot be ignored, the organization says, is the psychological and emotional support for caretakers and parents of SEN students. That's as most caregivers SOCO got in touch with suffered from emotional problems such as depression. The group also pointed out that none of the 3 educational resources centers run by the Educational Bureau provide psychological counseling services. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
One Hong Kong-based professor secured a $2 million grant to further develop cheaper and more flexible semiconductors. Our Elmi Lung has more details.
Touch screens on smartphones are often made with silicon. Though the inorganic material delivers high performance, its production process is complex and requires high temperatures, which make them expensive. That's why Professor Miao Qiang experimented with organic materials in making semiconductors, ones that are more lightweight, flexible, and cheaper to produce. With that, the chemist at the Chinese University of Hong Kong was able to build a sensing platform not much larger than a fingernail. Miao hopes to use this to detect ions and proteins in water for medical diagnoses in future, such as by testing a patient's blood and breath to see if they have lung cancer. In recognition of his work, the Sichuan native received the Croce Senior Research Fellowship, complete with a $2 million research grant. Elmi Dong, TVB News.
And that is our news. Have a great week ahead, everyone.
Bye.